This was peak Nokia. Kings of the keypad, masters of the keyboard, before touchscreens swept it all away. It makes sense their greatest smartphone would also be the last of its kind. The Nokia E90 Communicator, 2007's ultimate pocket computer. This phone also represents convergence, when your phone was now also a camera and a wireless internet terminal and a personal digital assistant and an MP3 player and a video player all rolled into one. The build quality on this thing is amazing. Nokia were at the top of their hardware game with this. It's made of high quality plastics and it feels incredibly solid in the hand. Both the external and internal LCDs are really nice, but it's the internal one with its amazing colour gamma and an absolutely stunning 800 by 352 pixel display, giving it an amazing resolution at this size. This phone also has high quality stereo speakers, which was rare for phones at the time. The fold-open keyboard feels great, though I must admit that internal four-way controller doesn't feel as nice as the outside four-way controller, which is raised slightly, making it much easier to use by comparison. The power button is located in a rather strange location here on the outside, though it's only used to initially power up the phone and not much else, so it's not really a problem. It's just odd, and it makes the outside of the phone seem like a separate Nokia phone. In fact, it looks kind of like other Nokia phones of the period. And with the rest of the E90 in this chocolatey brown colour, it really looks to me like a Nokia phone that's been pressed into a block of chocolate. So if you want to make an E90 communicator at home, get a block of chocolate and slowly melt a Nokia phone into the block. But what really sets this phone apart from any other phone is that double hinge. First, the outer hinge clicks open, then as you unfold further, the second hinge engages. It feels absurdly solid, like it was engineered for eternity. This phone feels so over-engineered. Just have a look at the micro SD card slot, for example. Inside the cover, there's a steel mechanism with a spring-loaded door. This is by far the most over-engineered micro SD card slot cover I've ever seen. I'm also curious at how these two folding sections are connected together. There's no obvious ribbon cable connecting the top and bottom sections. Nokia must have run a cable through one of these double hinge mechanisms to connect these two together. I'm rather intrigued about this, so I'm going to take this apart and have a look for myself. For a moment, I thought there might be screws hiding underneath these rubber feet, but that's not how Nokia do things, and looking carefully, there is one exposed screw here in the corner. So I found a copy of the service manual, and in Nokia style, there are some screws hidden by a plastic cover on the back. I'm carefully removing the back plastic cover, and there's the first problem. The voice key button appears to be already cracked. This indicates I could be dealing with brittle aged plastics. I'm going to have to be very careful if I don't want to damage anything, such as these clips holding this cover on. With the cover off, I can now see 4 more screws. I'm going to be taking this apart incredibly carefully because this is such a beautiful example of this phone. This was also a very kind gift to the channel, donated to me by the Robertsons family from England. Thank you for helping out this channel. I now just need to work out how to remove the keyboard to find even more screws. Again, care and extreme patience is required. But with some jiggling, it comes off, and now I can take off the keyboard. Taking out 4 more screws, I should finally be able to get inside this phone. And yep, there it goes. I'm getting somewhere now. The first thing we notice is the main board is covered in steel cans protecting all the chips. And the cans are all soldered down directly to the board. so I'm not going to be getting any further into this. But I can also see what I've come for, and it looks like there are two connectors from the main board carrying these thin wires that then go through each of the hinge mechanisms. While the hinges themselves use such a thick, heavy steel, and they're supported by a thick steel bar running the entire length of the phone. This is the sort of hinge quality that I would normally expect to see in a high-end laptop. And I can't quite see how they've done it. They've somehow managed to route those wires through this hinge mechanism. This is an absolutely amazing and astonishing design. I've never seen anything quite like it in a phone before. I'm not going to go any further with taking this apart. I've seen what I came to see, so I'm going to very carefully reassemble and then start testing this phone to see what it can do. I just need to carefully push these wires back into their setting as the service manual suggests for assembly, or the wires could get pinched in the mechanism and then I'd be in a world of pain. The rest of the process is really quite easy, just very carefully clipping everything back together and putting the screws back in. That voice button really should be glued back together, but for now I'm just going to put it back as it was. The back cover holds everything together and it's not falling out. Okay, let's put a SIM card in the phone and put the battery in and check it. Well, it's still powering up without any apparent problems. Welcome to Nokia. Nokia initially first launched the E90 in Indonesia, with the very first unit being sold at auction for $5,000. The Communicator series had always been very popular there, with the president of Indonesia himself also owning an E90, and we know this because Australian spies had been monitoring his phone, according to these leaked documents that Edward Snowden released. Though looking at these documents, they only mentioned voice events and voice intercepts. From this, and details in the news stories at the time, I don't think Australian spies hacked into the Nokia E90 directly. I assumed they probably used something like SS7 network hacking. Veritasium did an excellent video on how SS7 hacking is done. But this event shows us that the Nokia E90, combined with the new 3G networks, became the tool of power brokers, business travellers, even presidents. The previous owner of this phone has told me that this phone has easily gone on over 200 flights with them. In 2007, most laptops were still quite big and would generally only have a few hours of battery life. Compare this to the E90 with at least a day of battery life, and it fits in your pocket. This was the ultimate pocket device at the time. I want to test out different aspects of this phone, but with Australia's 3G networks now having been switched off, I can't test that aspect. But my understanding is that no more 3G makes phones in Australia no longer vulnerable to SS7 hacking. But I can still use this phone today on Wi-Fi. The inbuilt web browser, though, is terribly out of date. I'm actually more interested in trying out different modes of connection, such as what it would have been like at the time for an IT professional travelling the world and connecting into remote administration on various computer systems. I've loaded the PuTTY app into the phone so I can use it to SSH into other computer systems. In this case, I've been connecting to BBSs to get a feel for accessing remote systems on this phone. Unfortunately, this software is not decoding ANSI graphics, making it look kinda messy for most BBSs. But I must say, having a hardware keyboard feels really nice to use with this. I can see how amazing this would have been to carry around and have this sort of capability in your pocket. And then, after you've conducted all your business and handled all your emails, this phone offers the luxury of also being an MP3 player. And even better, this phone can do high-quality video playback. A decent-sized micro SD card makes this phone a multimedia powerhouse. This is an incredibly powerful phone that also offers a place for sanctuary, whether you are an international spy, or travelling for business. You can watch whatever you want on a long-haul flight or wherever you are. But it's that ultra-wide screen with its stunning visual quality that really shines when you want to watch full cinema aspect ratio films.
Can't hear anything.
Isn't this a little extreme? What is extreme? What's that? What are they doing?
The E90 runs Symbian S60 version 3, the exact same operating system as regular Nokia phones, such as the Nokia N95 ran at the time. This choice of OS was criticised on the E90 because previous Nokia communicator phones ran Symbian S80, making the E90 incompatible with all previous communicator apps. But the trade-off there is there were already so many apps for S60 Symbian. So I've decided to try out some software on here and see how well apps work with the larger internal screen. Being S60 version 3, this requires doing a similar Symbian certificate bypass as I did in the Nokia N95 video. This is essentially a sort of jailbreak that bypasses certificate signing and allows installing apps that have been blocked with time. With that done, I can now start installing some games. And I found a lot of incompatibility when running these on the large internal screen. Many apps simply refuse to run on the larger screen and will only work on the smaller outside screen. I really wanted to see some games in ultra-wide, so I kept searching. And I was able to find a couple of games that do run in full screen. One is Crash Bandicoot Nitro Kart. This runs really well, and it's a good example of the graphics capability of this phone with the large screen. Unfortunately, I couldn't find very many games that run in full screen, and the ones I did find are racing games, with another being Raging Thunder. This is fast and responsive, though that four-way controller next to the keyboard makes it really quite hard to control these games. As well as Symbian apps, I tried some Java games as well, and one I found that runs full screen on here is Jungle Fever. I'm not really sure what's going on with this game, but it's kind of fun in its own way. I kept searching and I found a non-racing Symbian game, Tomb Raider Legend. The startup logos indicate this game was made for a smaller screen, but despite that, it looks like the title screen is scaling to full screen. The opening game sequence is again small, but when the game runs, it is indeed in full screen. This is a nice little platform puzzler. I'm not really sure it needs the full widescreen experience, though the screen scaling, especially the background, is quite pixelated. But I think overall it makes for quite a nice experience. As with many Nokia phones of this period, this phone is let down somewhat by the limitations of the Symbian operating system. I've explored this before in other videos. While researching this video, I was shocked to find this statement made in 2007 from Symbian's executive management, where they openly state that Google's plan to release their own mobile operating system the following year was unlikely to succeed due to Google's inexperience with mobile devices. I know that Nokia were becoming arrogant with all their success, but now I see that Symbian were also blinded to what was coming. There was such an energy and excitement during the 2000s, and even the first few years of the 2010s with the start of the touchscreen revolution. Each year we were able to do so much more with new features and software on our phones. Then things began to change in the early to mid-2010s. Phones started being locked down, social media apps slowly took over, and turned our phones into attention-grabbing manipulation machines. When I look back at what once was, with phones like this one, I feel a great sadness for what has been lost. I think about all that convergence and capability having come together to make these amazing devices. Back then, our phones had such an elegance and a soul to them. I explored similar ideas further in a video I made a couple of months ago about our fascination with retro tech. Something has been lost with modern devices. They are now soulless, manipulative, and dangerous. And this has since prompted me to think about where things might be going in the future. One possibility is that after over a decade of living with fully converged devices, we might be heading away from convergence towards a new phase of technological divergence. I remember a brief period in the mid-2010s where some top-tier games were coming out for our ever more powerful touchscreen phones, but only some of these games translated well to touchscreen interfaces. Most were difficult to control and not worth the effort. It was then that, I believe, we saw the first true indication of a diverging future when Nintendo released the Switch. In that instant, phones were no longer the centre of the handheld gaming universe. Portable video games had split away from all those converging years. It also looks like Sony are going to follow with a new handheld gaming console. I'm definitely looking forward to that if it happens. There's also an increasing trend in standalone camera sales in recent years, driven mostly by high-end cameras. There's also an increasing grassroots trend to using older cameras that give a stylistic retro feel to photography. I also see this grassroots divergence trend happening with music as well, with some people choosing to go back to standalone music players and refurbished iPods. Many people are wanting to listen to music on an interruption-free device again. No streaming, no algorithms, and no AI, just deliberately selected, locally stored music. But after using the Nokia E90, the potential divergence that I'm interested in is related to the keyboard. Using the E90 had reminded me of how cool it is to use a keyboard on a portable device. Now, while there are still some niche phones being made with keyboards, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. There are even peripheral add-ons, like the Clix keyboard, that can add a hardware keyboard to our modern phones. I'm glad these solutions exist for us portable keyboard warriors, but I'm looking for divergence here, where I can carry my touchscreen device around for menial tasks like validating tickets or paying bills. I've recently found myself thinking a lot about these Lily Go devices like the T-Deck. They are underpowered, think Arduino level of capability, and they use weird networks such as the Meshtastic network. But they have real keyboards, and one model also has a variant with 4G connectivity. Really the only thing holding these back is their firmware development, or lack thereof so far. They are very much a grassroots device, intended for the more technically minded person who wants to tinker. I admit this is a tiny niche market, but they have that buzz that I'm personally missing and looking for these days. Maybe it's time for a new kind of pocket companion, something soulful and elegant, and not just another slab of glass. So tell me, what would you carry if you had a choice? What device would you bring into your pocket universe along with your phone? What does your future of divergence look like? Thanks again to the Robertsons for your encouragement and support to help make this video. Thank you to everyone else who helps support the channel through the paid options like Patreon and YouTube memberships. I greatly appreciate anything you can give. No matter how small your donation, this really helps me. Thank you. If the only things you can offer is a like or a comment, then I really appreciate that. I love reading all your comments, especially when I make a mistake and get corrected. I love hearing your perspectives and answering any questions. So if you're continuing to watch these videos, then thank you. Until then, that's it for this one, and I'll see you next time.